Hi, I'm Ron Bateman, the Sheriff of Anne Arundel County. Welcome to your Anne Arundel's Most Wanted program, a program where we showcase wanted criminals, highlight open cases, and look to you for tips. You, concerned citizens, that share my same goal, and that's keeping our communities safe. You'd be proud to know that your calls have allowed us to put handcuffs on thousands of criminals. So sit back, set your DVR, or grab a pen and paper, and help do your part in catching criminals. You're watching Anne Arundel's Most Wanted. And now for another regular guest on our show, First Sergeant Jimmy DeLay from the Maryland State Police, Glen Burnie Barrack. Welcome back to the show, brother.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Who'd you bring for us?
I have two for you today, both stemming from DUI arrests. The first subject is Michael Jason Marsh. He's a 23-year-old male with a date of birth of October 16th, 1992, 6 foot tall, weighing approximately 185 pounds, brown eyes and brown hair. Last known address of 500 Pleasant View Avenue, Pasadena, Maryland. On April 22nd of this year at approximately 1:30 a.m., a uniformed trooper was on patrol in the area of westbound Mountain Road, just west of Catherine Avenue. He observed a white Ford F-250 bearing Maryland registration traveling directly in front of him. He observed the Ford swerve from its lane of travel onto the slow shoulder by more than a quarter of the vehicle's width. This happened on 3 additional occasions, at which time the trooper activated his emergency equipment and stopped the vehicle. The driver took a while to pull over before making a right turn onto Appalachian Drive and then pulled to the right side of the roadway. He made contact with the driver, Michael Marsh, identified through his Florida driver's license. The trooper immediately detected the odor of an alcoholic beverage on his breath. His eyes were bloodshot and glassy, and his speech was slurred. Marsh had problems finding his registration card, fumbling through the papers, eventually finding him and saying, "This is my dad's truck." Marsh stated he had 2 Bud Light beers and a shot of Fireball at a bar called The Office after work. Marsh agreed to submit to a series of field sobriety tests. During the walk and turn tests, Marsh started before instructed to do so. He missed heel-to-toe contact, he raised his arms for balance, and he took some steps while walking backwards. During the one-leg stand, his balance was poor. He extended his arm onto his truck for balance and placed his foot down on several occasions. Marsh was arrested for DUI and transported to the Glen Burnie Barracks, where he agreed to submit to a breath test, which resulted in .09. Marsh was released from the barrack to his dad. Marsh failed to appear for court on October 26th of this year and now has an outstanding bench warrant for his arrest. The second subject I have for you is Caitlin Marie Long. She's a 25-year-old female with a birthday of April 6, 1990. She's 5'4", weighs approximately 130 pounds, has blue eyes and blonde hair. On December 20th, 2013, at approximately 2 a.m., a uniformed trooper was working speed enforcement at southbound Route 3 north of Defense Highway. He observed a vehicle traveling 74 in a posted 50-mile-per-hour zone. The vehicle was identified as a gold 2002 GMC Envoy. The trooper activated his emergency equipment and initiated a traffic stop. The driver was identified by her Maryland license as Caitlin Marie Long. While speaking with Long, the trooper smelled the strong odor of an alcoholic beverage emitting from the interior of the vehicle. Long's eyes appeared glassy, watery, and bloodshot. When asked how much she had to drink, she stated 3 beers. Long stated she had just left the Green Turtle restaurant. Long exited her vehicle and walked to the front. The trooper informed Long that he would perform a series of field sobriety tests on her, to which she agreed to submit to. During the instructional stage of the walk and turn test, she lost her balance, broke her feet apart, and started the test before being asked to do so. She also missed heel-to-toe on numerous steps and did not take the proper amount of steps. Long was instructed on how to perform the one-leg stand test. When advised she could begin, Long stared at the trooper and began to cry. Long stated, "I can't do it." When asked for clarification, Long stated, "I'm over the limit. I know, I just can't do it." The trooper arrested Long for driving under the influence and transported her to the Glen Burnie Barrack for processing. Long agreed to a breath test, which resulted in .17. Long was given copies of paperwork and later released to a sober driver. long failed to obey the conditions of probation, and now has an active bench warrant for violation of probation.
Well, you know the drill, folks. You know the whereabouts of any of those individuals. Do not approach them. Instead, call that number on the screen, 410-222-1490 or 911, 24 hours a day. Keep those calls coming in, folks, because your tips are definitely paying off. Sergeant, thank you very much, and happy holidays to you.
All right,
buddy.
you too. Thank you, Sheriff.
And of course, everyone recognizes our next guest is Corporal Amy Amiga from the Annapolis City Police Department. Now, Amy, you're going to do yours, and then since Corporal Jacqueline Davis can't make it from the county police, you're going to do hers.
That's right.
Very good. Okay, who'd you bring for us?
I've got 3 from us and 3 from the county. Our first one is Douglas Michael Johnson. Date of birth is December 5th of 1953. He's a white male, 5 foot 10 inches tall, weighing 163 pounds with brown hair and blue eyes. He has scars on his left leg and his right leg and on his chest, and also a tattoo on his upper right arm of a peacock. His last known address is 169 Duke of Gloucester Street, right here in Annapolis. He has 7 open warrants. Charges are disorderly conduct and open container violations. One of these warrants stems from an incident on October 26, 2014. At 11 a.m., an Annapolis police officer responded to City Dock Coffee for a disorderly man sitting in a chair outside yelling at people as they walked by. The officer saw the man, Douglas Johnson, sitting in a chair in front of the coffee house drinking a beer. As the officer approached Johnson, he could hear him yelling at people passing by. The officer asked Johnson to stop yelling, and he refused. An employee of the coffee house came out to speak with the officer, and Johnson started making racial comments towards the employee. The officer told Johnson to be quiet, and he refused. The officer arrested Johnson for disorderly conduct and having an open container of alcohol. Johnson failed to appear in court for these charges and has 6 other open warrants for open container and disorderly conduct violations. Our second subject is John Raeford Fleming, otherwise known as Troy. His date of birth is September 13th, 1984. He's a white male, 5 foot 10 inches tall, weighing 155 pounds with brown hair and hazel eyes. His last known address is 1820 Woods Road in Annapolis. He has 2 open warrants. The first warrant is for failing to appear in court for a charge of failing to remain at the scene of an accident. The second warrant is for failing to appear in court for the charges of second-degree assault and drunken disorderly. The first warrant stems from a traffic accident in April of 2007 that occurred at West Street and Admiral Drive. Fleming left the area without providing information to the other driver. He was arrested and charged, but failed to appear on these charges in September of 2008. The second warrant stems from an incident that occurred in May of 2008. Fleming was caught by the employee of a business going through private offices and told to leave the business. Once Fleming was removed from the business, he brandished a silver table knife at the employee. Fleming fled the scene but was apprehended by police. He was intoxicated and charged with drunken disorderly and second-degree assault. He failed to appear on these charges in July of 2008. And our third subject is Trey Alexander Pittman. His date of birth is July 6, 1994. He's a Hispanic male, 6 foot tall, 150 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. His last known address is 8117 River Park Road in Bowie, and he has an arrest warrant for theft less than $1,000. This warrant stems from an incident in March 26th of 2015. Loss prevention personnel from Kohl's, located at 260 Old Solomon's Island Road, contacted the Annapolis Police Department to report a shoplifting. Loss prevention reported 3 male suspects, one of whom was Pittman, entered the store and grabbed clothing items. As loss prevention personnel were watching, the men went into the dressing rooms. One of the men came out with all the items he went in with, but the other 2 came out with no items and bulges under their clothing. Kohl's personnel checked the dressing room and discovered empty merchandise packaging. Meanwhile, all the suspects left the store without paying for any merchandise. Detectives were able to identify Pittman as one of the suspects and obtained this warrant. Pittman stole $170 worth of clothing from Kohl's without paying for it. And then the county police has 3 people they're looking for. The first one is Robert Vincent Jeppy Jr. His 5 foot 9 inches tall. He weighs 180 pounds. His date of birth is February 24th, 1984, and his last known address is 1331 Hazel Street in Curtis Bay. He currently has a warrant for second-degree assault. On October 12th, officers responded to the 700 block of Cromwell Park Drive in Linthicum for a domestic report. officers met with the victim, who was sobbing, crying, and shaking inside of a vehicle, suffering from injuries to her face and head. She stated that while driving to drop her kids off at school, her boyfriend, Robert Jeppy, grabbed her by the hair and yanked her head downward. After dropping her kids off, Mr. Jeppy again grabbed her hair, yanked her head down, and punched her in the face. As she continued to drive, Mr. Jeppy suddenly grabbed the emergency brake and pulled it up, causing the vehicle to stop abruptly. Mr. Jeppy grabbed the victim's purse and took $700 from her wallet as she fought to try and keep him from getting her purse. Mr. Jeppy then threw the vehicle keys at the victim and walked away, taking the house and mailbox keys. The officer wrote and obtained this arrest warrant through the commissioner's office. Mr. Jeppy has an active warrant for second-degree assault. The second subject from Anne Arundel County Police is Jonathan Danny Ross. He's 6 foot 5 inches tall, weighs 325 pounds, and his date of birth is November 22nd, 1979. His last known address is 101-204 Water Fountain Way in Glen Burnie. He has a warrant for robbery with a handgun. On October 7th of this year, officers met with an adult male victim who reported that he was visiting friends in the 300 block of Key Avenue. The victim told officers that a man who was unknown to him arrived at the residence and began a conversation. The man eventually asked the victim to drive him to the store, but the victim refused. The man produced a handgun, pointed it at him, and said he was taking the victim's car. The man took the victim's car and never returned. The victim described the suspect as a black male, approximately 6 foot 5 and approximately 300 pounds. Through investigation, the officer was able to identify the male suspect as Jonathan Ross. The officer checked our booking photo database for Jonathan Ross and found a mugshot of Jonathan Danny Ross, date of birth November 22nd, 1979. The officer prepared a photographic lineup containing a photo of Ross and 5 other subjects of similar appearance. The victim positively identified Ross as the suspect who robbed him. A few days later, officers located the victim's stolen vehicle in the area of Aquahart Road and Crane Highway. The officer searched the area and was able to obtain a surveillance video recording that captured the victim's vehicle entering a parking lot. Inside the vehicle was a black male in a white shirt. When the male exited the vehicle to enter a nearby convenience store, the officer could clearly see that the male in the victim's vehicle was Jonathan Ross. The officer wrote and obtained this arrest warrant through the commissioner's office. Mr. Ross currently has an active warrant for robbery. And the third subject with Anne Arundel County is Cortez Lamont Cameron. He's 5 foot 7 inches tall, weighs 135 pounds. His date of birth is July 5th, 1989. His last known address is 6907 B4 Glen Ridge Circle in Glen Burnie. He has a warrant for first-degree assault. On September 20th of this year, at 11 p.m., officers responded to the 7800 block of Tall Pines Court in Glen Burnie for a report of a theft and destruction of property. Upon arrival, officers spoke to the victim, and she explained that her roommate, Cortez Lamont Cameron, pulled a knife on her. The victim stated that she let Mr. Cameron live in a bedroom of her apartment because he was homeless. She explained that he had his girlfriend continually staying in his room, and she asked him not to have her in the apartment. Mr. Cameron became angry and pushed her several times in the chest with both hands. He pushed her into the living room area where he pulled a knife out of his pocket and held it towards her with the blade open. The victim said that Mr. Cameron told her, "I'm going to put this in you. I'm going to put this blade up in you." She told officers that Mr. Cameron was yelling at her and screamed in her face, "Stay here, I got something for your ass," and walked back into his bedroom. The victim heard the sound of Mr. Cameron loading a shotgun. She looked into the bedroom and saw Mr. Cameron loading shells into a black pump-action shotgun. After Mr. Cameron loaded several rounds into the shotgun, he walked towards her holding the shotgun while yelling he was going to kill her. She ran out of the apartment in fear for her life. Cortez Lamont Cameron was convicted of robbery on November 29, 2007, and based on the felony robbery conviction, cannot legally possess a firearm. The officer completed an application for statement of charges on Cortez Cameron, and he has an active warrant for first-degree assault.
Very good. Folks, you know the whereabouts of any of those individuals. Do not approach them. Instead, call that number on the screen, 410-222-1490 or 911, 24 hours a day. Amy, thank you very much, and happy holidays to you, too.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Now, before I start those subjects wanted by the Anne Arundel County Sheriff's Office, let's go through the normal holiday safety checklist. Remember, When you buy any kind of gifts for someone, make sure you store those items in the trunk of your car, not the back seat. Not the back seat with a jacket or a blanket over it, because the criminals know what that is. So try to store any gifts you buy in the trunk of your vehicle. Make sure you try to park in a well-lit area. Most of the parking lots at the Annapolis Mall, Marley Station, the various malls throughout the county have well-lit areas. So try to park under those lights if you can in well-lit areas. Stay away from the dark spots. Also, especially women, if you are in a grocery store this time of year, any time of the year, try not to leave your purse unattended. Don't put it in the cart and then look for your item on the shelf, because then you're taking your eye off the purse. So you have a lot of thieves out there that are willing to snatch your purse because they know this time of year you might be carrying a little bit extra money. So be careful with that. So with that said, now for those subjects wanted by the Anne Arundel County Sheriff's Office. First, we have William Stephen Ward Jr. Ward has 4 open warrants, so let's sort them out. He failed to appear for traffic court on August the 13th, 2015. A bench warrant was issued. Failed to appear for criminal court on September 1st, 2015. Another bench warrant was issued. He failed to appear for criminal court on September the 4th of 2015. Another bench warrant. And he failed to appear for criminal court on September 22nd, 2015, and yet another bench warrant. And that's why we need your help in tracking him down. And it's no wonder that the majority of our warrants here in Anne Arundel County are for failure to appear, because people just cannot seem to show up for court. So we are looking for William Stephen Ward Jr. He's a 26-year-old white male with a date of birth of October the 5th, 1989. He's 5 foot 11 inches tall, weighs 234 pounds, and has brown hair and blue eyes. His last known address is 1918 Ridgeville Road in Edgewater. And our next subject is Anthony Ryan Anderson. Anderson has 2 open warrants for violating the terms of his probation. And I will also remind the viewers that the second largest number of warrants in Anne Arundel County are for, you guessed it, violation of probation. So on December the 10th, 2014, Anderson was convicted of CDS, possession not marijuana. He bounced between treatment programs and refused to submit to several drug screenings, which, as you can guess, violated his probation, and a warrant was issued. We located another violation of probation warrant for an Anthony Anderson. This one's middle name is Brian with a Y. He has the exact same date of birth, home address, and state identification number as Anthony Ryan Anderson, so we're going to say that they're the same people. Anthony Bryan's bench warrant is for violating the terms of his probation for a drug charge. He bounced between treatment facilities and refused to submit to multiple drug screenings. Yep, same guy. Let's get this one back on the track. So we're looking for Anthony Bryan Anderson with a middle name of Brian with a Y, or Ryan. Either one will do. He's a 29-year-old white male with the date of birth of May the 1st of 1986. He's 5 foot 8 inches tall, weighs 145 pounds, has brown hair and blue eyes, and his last known address is 418 Highland Drive in lovely Edgewater. And we have next Christina Anna Hyatt. Hyatt has an open warrant for failing to appear for court on September the 15th, 2015 for her prior theft $1,000 to $10,000 charge. Stealing money from a disabled housebound individual. Shame on you, Christina. She told the court she lived at 2811 Chapman Court in Crofton. Then she notified them she moved to 343 Gatewater Court, apartment 103 in Glen Burnie. We tried both and went to where she worked, but she had recently quit and we missed her. We need your help tracking her down and giving the victim some closure. We are looking for Christina Anna Hyatt, who's a 26-year-old white female with a date of birth of July the 21st, 1991. She's 5 foot tall, she weighs 175 pounds, and has brown hair and brown eyes. Her last known address is 343 Gatewater Court, apartment 103 in Glen Burnie, Maryland. And our last subject is going to be Brian Heath Bynum Jr. Bynum Jr. was on probation for a prior burglary conviction. Multiple positive urinalysis tests and failure to pay restitution tops his shortcomings off. The sum result, you guessed it, a bench warrant for violation of probation was issued. So today we are looking for Brian Heath Bynum Jr., who's a 26-year-old black male with a date of birth of July 20th, 1991. He's 5 foot 6 inches tall, weighs 146 pounds, and has black hair and brown eyes. And his last known address is 5210 Sands Road in Lothian. Now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to meet Mr. Marty Madden, who's senior advisor to our governor, Larry Hogan. Stay tuned. This month, we are filming our show at the Maryland State House in lovely Annapolis, Maryland. And with me today is Marty Madden, who's a former senator and former delegate of the state of Maryland, and now is a senior advisor to our governor, my friend Larry Hogan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. Happy to be here.
Hey, before we get started about this room and some of the history of the legislature, how about talking about where you came from and your history?
I am a native of Greenbelt, Maryland. My parents were one of the original settlers there. We raised 6 children. So I went locally to school here at DeMatha High School, and I had the honor of being elected in 1990 to the Maryland House of Delegates representing Prince George's and Howard counties, and then later on went on to be the senator from those same 2 counties in 1995, where I served until 2002.
And your role now?
I am Governor Hogan's senior advisor.
Very good.
Covers whatever he needs me to do at the time. I advise him on budgetary issues, legislative policy, communications with the legislature, and I couldn't work for a finer person. I've known him since 1982, and he's just as genuine as you see him all the time.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this room we're in. The audience is going to see as Dale pans around the room. They'll see what this looks like. But talk about the recreation of this.
Well, this is a recreation of the way the House of Delegates looked in the late 19th century. We are the oldest continually operating legislature in the country. Maryland State is, and so we're very proud of it. This is the House of Delegates as depicted back then. House of Delegates, along with the Senate, is the legislative branch of our government, and it's interesting that the State House contains totally 2 of the 3 branches of government. You have the President of the Senate with offices down this hallway. You have Speaker of the House, Michael Bush. His offices are down there, and then right above us we have the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor's offices. So within this one historic dome, we have 2 of the 3 branches of government.
And that's kind of the reason I wanted to film this month's show in this building, because this is where the laws are made. The laws that eventually lead to breaking of laws and arrest warrants come from, where this show, as you know, we showcase wanted people. And so the laws originate here that eventually we may have to arrest someone. So let's talk a little bit about the hallway or the room across the hall.
The room of the hall across the hall contains the depiction of where George Washington resigned as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army, thus setting the precedent for civilian control of the military. And right in the middle of the hallway between these 2 rooms is the draft of George Washington's address to the Congress at that time. That actual document itself is considered the 4th most important document in our nation's history, because again, it did establish civilian control of the military.
Very good. Now, right now, today, we have 141 delegates, and I see we only have chairs for 20 in this room.
We do, and that's why, I don't know, people maybe were happier than in those days, but yeah.
And we were slightly smaller.
I'm not sure about the growth, the way that we've come up with. I know in 1972, I believe there was a real reorganization. The Senate went up from like 24 members to 47, and at that time they decided to have 3 delegates for each Senate seat. So 47 senators, 3 times that amount, 141 delegates.
Oh, very good. You just educated me. I didn't know how that 141 was established.
Yes.
Very good. Yes. Well, we want to thank our governor, Larry Hogan. We want to thank you for allowing us to use this facility, for our show today. Did I leave anything out? Anything else you wanted to bring up?
Well, we are the oldest continuing operating legislature in the country, but I think your office itself, Sheriff of Anne Arundel County, goes back way further than that, to 1650.
Right. John Norwood was our first sheriff, and he actually got paid in tobacco. So I'm glad I'm not getting paid in tobacco. I don't smoke or chew, so money's better. But yeah, this has a lot of history. Actually, if the audience doesn't know, we were actually appointed by the king back in 1650. That's how the sheriff came about, starting in one-year terms and eventually going to 2, 3, and 4-year terms.
Right, and you are part of the judicial branch of government.
Judicial branch of government and the 119th sheriff in Anne Arundel County. So
As opposed to the 62nd governor of Maryland,
exactly, yes.
Governor Hogan. So you can see there that the sheriff's office has a long, rich history and tradition.
Absolutely. Marty, thank you very much. Folks, as I close the show, I want to thank a few people who allow this to happen every single month. First off, behind the camera there, Mr. Dale Boyer. I want to thank our county executive, Steve Shue. I want to thank our chiefs of police. That's Mike Pristoop and Mr. Altamari from Anne Arundel County. Also want to thank our Maryland State Police Superintendent, and also from my office, who produces the show every single month, Lieutenant Jennifer Gilbert Duran. And a special guest in the audience today, Senator, I almost called him Lieutenant, Senator Big Ed Riley. Mike Valente, thank you very much from DGS. Thank you, everyone. Remember, let's keep Anne Arundel County safe. I'm Sheriff Ron Bateman. We'll see you next time on Anne Arundel's Most Wanted.